Hello, guys. This is Martin from Tranquillity, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 189 of Richard MetalFan interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Martin Brandstrom from the world famous Dark Tranquillity. How you doing today, Martin?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's a good afternoon here in Georgia in the USA. How is it over in Sweden?
It's good. It's like we have a second wind of summer. The summer was awful, but now the autumn has been pretty good. So everything is like, upside down. But yeah, I'm enjoying these days when we have a bit of sun, and we'll see how long it lasts.
Yeah, same. It's pretty nice outside where I'm at. I mean, usually in the mornings when I go to work, it's like sometimes it's chilly, so I have to like wear a hoodie. So it's like fall's coming.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, totally. So kind of like the format is I want to do like a rundown of your discography and talk about your musical journey. So take me back to young Martin Brandstrom. So kind of growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to play keyboards?
Well, I mean, the first love I had in music was a metal band. It was Kiss when I was 8 years old, and I was fortunate enough to see the Lick It Up tour. My father took me to that show when I was there. I mean, I was super impressionable, and then a Kiss show when you're eight is a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's a time when you had vinyl records, and I just had a few, but I got that Kiss Alive too, and I mean, there's so many good songs. I just kept spinning that all over and over and over again. But then I discovered synth music, and the first band I got in touch with there was I guess, kind of hardcore for a young person was Kraftwerk. Have you heard about those guys?
That's news to me.
Kraftwerk is like it's an old band from Germany, but I mean their music is kind of demanding. It's very introspective, but a lot of artists have had them as influences, so they were a big thing for the synth scene. But that's what got me into synth music, and that's kind of where my journey separated from metal at that point. And went totally into synth music. There was bands like Depeche Mode and
Yeah.
bands like that. So that was a big thing when I grew up, and Gothenburg is a small town. If
Yeah.
you're involved in the music scene, you kind of run into each other.
Yeah.
And there was this club that the Dark Tranquillity guys used to hang out, and they played a few shows there that had a crossover between synth music and metal music. And I was working there. Even I was 15, and I was working in the bar. I was selling beer in the bar, and I was 15. So we started to get to know each other, and then uh, in that age, you hang out, you have some parties, and you listen to each other's music. Everyone was making music, so I was
Yeah.
listening to their music, and they were listening to my music. And then they started to have a career in metal, and I had a lot of respect for the music. I thought it was super interesting, but we did different things.
Yeah.
But after a few albums,
But y'all are
I
still
guess that
homies in the scene because it's a small town.
yeah, that's what happened. Actually, I was recording the first the first time we talked about music because we just met briefly at that bar, but that was in the studio. I had recorded a demo tape with my band, and I was in the studio and ran into them when they were recording Skydancer. So we just stood there and talked about music, and they recorded Skydancer. And yeah, we just thought about it. It was Niklas Sundin who kind of pointed it out to me years later. That said, "Hey, remember that time we met? That was when we recorded Skydancer." So I mean, our paths crossed early. Um, I think I was 17 when they recorded, 17 or 18. Everyone was super young. And I guess after they made a few albums, after The Mind's Eye, and when they were leading up to Projector, then we had, I mean, then I already knew the guys quite well, and I had a side project with it was Peter Evers from In Flames, and it was his brother Anders Evers from Tiamat. It was Niklas Sundin and Anders Evert from Dark Tranquillity. We just had like this side project, a pop band, just for
Yeah.
fun. And then they realized that when they were doing Projector, that they wanted to incorporate keyboards into their music, and so that's when they asked me if I wanted to join. And by then, I had only listened to the Gallery and the Mind's Eye, and I couldn't really see a fit on
Both
how
classic
would.
albums too.
Yeah, the really classic albums, and I mean, I really love them. But I back then I couldn't see how keyboard would fit, and I was on my own journey, so I thought, no, maybe that's not a good thing. But then they recorded Projector and showed it to me afterwards, and they asked me again. I mean, don't you think that keyboards would be a good fit? And they already had some keyboards on Projector, and when I heard Projector, I was like, oh, yeah, this might work. This would be really interesting. So that's when I joined the band, and so I was on the touring cycle of Projector. I was in the band, and then we wrote, yeah, and then everything continued from that.
Yeah, I'm always curious, like what were your bands like before you joined up Dark Tranquillity? Was it just like synth stuff?
In my bands,
Yeah,
yeah, that was only synth stuff, like completely electronic. Uh, um, yeah, and at that time, nowadays you can make so much with a computer, but if you only have a synthesizer and you just put that onto tape, it's not going to sound very exciting. You need to have some effects and do stuff like that. So yeah,
yeah,
it's become a lot more democratic on how you can sound for much less money nowadays. But it was a synth music, and I actually with I had it. We were just two persons. It was me and this other guy, and a few years ago, we just decided because then we went separate. He continued with electronic music, and I went with Dark Tranquillity. But just it was like 5 years ago. We just asked each other. I mean, maybe we should do that album anyway, and we did an album. So now I had this side project where I do only electronic music with my old friend from that time. So it's kind of a way to revisit your youth
yeah.
and give those poor lads a chance to make an album. So we did that.
Awesome. So how is it like working with the guys in Dark Tranquillity? Because I've actually had interviewed Mikkel last year when y'all were in Atlanta. And apparently, like you and Mikkel were like buddies, and he asked you to like join the band, and that was like around '99, right after they did Projector.
Yeah, it was '98, I think, and we started working together in '99. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's been different environments. I mean, if you imagine the band Dark Tranquillity started '89, and now it's 23, so it's 34 years. And I guess the dynamics of a band is going to shift over the years. You kind of set the ground rules as teenagers, and then you kind of carry that on as adults. So I mean, it's been a very creative environment. Back then, when I started, we for a long while we had this steady lineup with Anders, Martin, Niklas, and Michael, and me. So we were the same people for a long time, and the benefit of that. Of those five people, when we were those five people, was that everyone was writing, so everyone had creative input. So it was a very creative atmosphere, but also it could be a bit some competition as well when everyone is writing to kind of get the band into the direction that you would like, or you want to put your own songs forward, or stuff like that. But that worked for a long time. We were a steady lineup for a long time.
Yeah,
And
it's
now, yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say because your first album with the band was in 2000 with Haven. I love this
Yes.
album, and what was the whole writing and recording process for Haven, being it was your first record with the band?
That was really exciting times for me. And I mean, it was the first time I got to kind of try to carry the style that I have into metal. And the idea after Projector was that we would, because Projector was a more mellow album than the previous albums. So the idea first was that Haven was supposed to be even more mellow. So we actually wrote there was a version of Haven that was a lot softer. And then
Really?
yeah, and then we went on tour. I think we went to Japan and we played some of those songs, and that it didn't go over well at all. And also when the first tour, when we were touring on Project, we were touring with In Flames, and then we had already started writing Haven, and when we were playing Projector live, we thought that maybe we should go back and rewrite that album. So we did. We most of the song stayed on the album, but we did new versions that had more of metal elements into it. I'm always going to be, I mean, proud of that album because it was a starting point for me. But I'd rather not listen to it because I can hear that it was so early steps in like on my sound design, or kind of the melodies I did. I would like to I would like to do a do-over
Yeah.
when I hear it. But at the time it was a super important step to me. And I think we discovered some elements on Haven that we refined and used later on in our music. So I think even though I think that one sounds more outdated than Projector and the previous albums, but I think still it was important for us to start experimenting with that kind of sound.
Yeah, because I think Projector and Haven are almost kind of like brother and sister in a way. They both kind of sound similar. And of course, with you coming in on the keyboards, definitely adds a lot, like a different layer to the Dark Tranquillity sound. And because I know, especially with live, you don't want to have to rely on backing tracks. You want to just make how it is on the album is what you can actually do live.
Yeah. That's what I tried to do there. And yeah. And I guess you learn more as long as you go. I'm happy that we get to do it for such a long time. I think we improve over the way. I mean, at least we develop in some direction.
Yeah, totally. And so, what was the whole like touring cycle like for Haven? If you remember, like the first tours you did in support of the album.
I think back then we only did support tours, and if I might remember correctly, we hadn't gone to America yet. We were still only in Europe. We did festivals, and we did. I think that the tour was with it was still the touring cycle for Projector was that package was insane. It was In Flames, Children Bodom, us, and Arch Enemy. So I mean,
What a lineup!
everyone was. Yeah, I mean. Sometimes when I see because I saw a picture of that ticket the other day, just a photo of it, and I was like, did that really happen? But yeah, that was a long time ago. Everyone was in their youth, and it was like everyone was taking off. And the tour with Haven was, if I remember correctly, was In Flames again, and it was a band called Finnish band called Sentenced.
Yeah, I heard the name.
Yeah, it was a little more like a goth metal, and a band called To Die For. But I mean, we were all, I mean, those times I talked about before that we were all hanging together. The In Flames guys were included in that as well. So it was kind of like just taking your buddies out in a bus and having a lot of parties and all over Europe, and kind of getting started with all of our ambitions. It was exciting times. Everything was new, especially to me.
Yeah. And then going into the next album, Damage Done. I like this album. Personally, a very underrated Dark Tranquillity album. Like, I don't think really anybody talks about this album. And I think it's like you guys' like heaviest album to date. What was it like going from Haven to this?
To me, it was really exciting because then by being exposed to so much metal again and working with metal, I really wanted to go further into that direction again after Haven. Like it's kind of a reaction of what we did with Haven. It's like, okay, we like this, and it would be nice to kind of go heavier again. And so that was what we decided for Damage Done, and that was how it was written. And I remember. But we recorded the album, and it was mixing. But then I was also a session keyboardist for a band called Tiamat. So I was out on tour, and Martin Henriksson came and met me on tour. He was just out traveling, and he had the master of Damage Done. That was the first time I heard the finished result, and I was so happy with how it sounded. I was so proud of that album, and I think also, and that was also with that. That's the album that took us to the United States the first time.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of exciting things happening with that album.
Yeah.
And we started to play a few more songs from that album now recently. Just trying to. It was. We picked Cathode Ray Sunshine now. We didn't do that for such a long time. It's from Damage Done, right?
Yeah, it's that. And I think did you also play like Monochromatic Stains or Final Resistance?
Those two songs has been like a staple for us a long time. But Cathedral Sunshine was something we didn't play much. I mean, is a song called "Hours Passed in Exile" on that album as well?
Oh yeah, it's like track 2.
Okay, yeah. So we're doing that now as well for the first time, and it's really cool to revisit those old stuff and trying to bring new life into them. I think it's cool. I really like that album.
Yeah. And so tell me about like the first tour in the States. Was that like your first time ever in the States, and were you like nervous at all?
Yeah, of course. It was the first time as a band. I had been to the States as an exchange student in Oklahoma, of all places.
Wow.
But it was the first time as a band. And again, we toured with In Flames again. So
Yeah.
they brought us out for a third time, and it was it was Kill Switch Engage, and it's not. I
Yeah.
mean, everyone knows them. There was them. That was a good lineup too. It was one more band. Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was Sentenced again, that Finnish
Yeah.
band.
Yeah, because I remember seeing Mikkel and Peter was on the Rob Flynn's podcast, and they were talking about that. And I remember Mikkel about almost got lost because apparently he wanted to go see Rush when they were in the States around the same time.
Yeah, there was that tour. Oh yeah, we were so nervous. I couldn't believe he took that risk. And like I mean, if he missed the flight or whatever, he would miss the tour. I think yeah, there was some annoyance in the rest of the band that he took that risk, but it worked out fine.
Yeah.
It was a bit scary. And in Europe, we had this management because, like I said, for Haven, we only did support tours, and also for Projector, we only did support tours. But we wanted to try to start and headline our tours. And I remember we had a management that said that if he said that if you're gonna headline, that's the end of your band because you don't have the weight to do it.
Yeah.
But we insisted, and then it worked. So that's kind of when we started to be a headline band in Europe. It took a while longer in America.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you've definitely come a long way since then.
Yeah, it's like everything is so incremental. I used to say that we have like an incline, but it's so it's not steep. It's like a few percent. But if you draw that out during a long period of time, something is going to happen in the end. I guess that's the way it was for us. We had never had this big push. It was just a steady, small incline.
Yeah. And then going into a character, I love this album too. I think it's a bit heavier than Damage Done, in my opinion. So what was the whole recording process like for this?
I think I mean with Damage Done, we just went heavier, I think. But with character, I think we tried to experiment, being a bit more modern, I guess. Especially from my part, I tried more things with the keyboards. I was a bit more experimental. I remember that. Yeah, it was. I think Martin Hendrickson was a big factor in how we wrote the songs then. So it was a lot of his brainchild, I guess, character, and I think he did really well on that. And yeah, we did our work too, and I think it turned out really good. Lost to Apathy is still a song we still play almost every show.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Yeah, it gets people going.
Yeah, especially like hearing that your little keyboard that down 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 down. It just for some reason it's just a very catchy, kind of like earworm music, so to speak.
Yeah. That worked out fine. I remember I heard a song by Dimmu Borgir that was way more complex, but I was inspired by that, and I thought, well, maybe it's a soundscape like this that kind of anthem, like an anthem. That I wanted to try. It was that song, Progenies of the Apocalypse, I heard. It's nothing like it, but it was something I just heard and I think, oh, I want to do something like that.
Yeah, it kind of has that almost similarities a little bit, but not like a blatant ripoff, but it has almost kind of similar a little bit.
I was just inspired by it, and then of course I'm not going to try to take it.
Yeah.
But it's
yeah. And then we get to probably, in my by unpopular opinion, my favorite Dark Tranquillity album, Fiction. What was the whole writing and recording process for this album? Because this is, like I said, my favorite Dark Tranquillity album.
Yeah, the writing process. Back then, we were still writing in the rehearsal place. It was also much of Martin Hendrickson was a big influence on that album. It was the first. I had started to build my own studio. On Character, I did my keyboards in my studio, but on Fiction was the first time we recorded everything in my studio. So that was a big responsibility. Um, the, uh, I like Fiction a lot too. I think it's a super important album. Out of those we've covered so far, I think this is the most important album to me, at least. I think this really paved the way for more for daring to think that we could go lots of different directions. I think there's a lot of exciting songs there. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So that
yeah, I love like the songs on here, like Nothing to No One, Lesser Faith, Terminus, Misery's Crown, Focus Shift. I feel like every song is almost kind of like a different like emotion, like you and Mikkel and everybody was at that time.
Yeah, and I think on that album we had a different guy mixing us. It was Two Madsen from Denmark. Before that we had the Fredrik Nordström, like every Gothenburg band, and he's great. But it was just something different in Two Madsen's mix that had its grittiness. And then that was the first time I experienced that someone really took care of my keyboards and gave them a place. And I really liked what the sound he did on like piano sounds on Fiction. There's the kind of cold to the touch. That's something that really resonated with me, and that's something that I've tried to keep after that. So I think on my part, I discovered a lot of new stuff and what you can do in music. And there was this song, the song on the Misery's Crown.
Yeah.
That's a song that we thought were too different for the album. It was we thought that maybe we're not going to put that on there. But then in the end we did, and for the longest time we didn't play it live. It was just on the album, Misery's Crown. Yeah, whatever, it's there. And I think it was 1 year after the release, we decided for a festival that, okay, well, let's try and play that song. And this place just exploded, the reaction. So that's when we discovered that that song was special.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know about your own songs. What songs are resonating with people? Especially now you can see on Spotify, like on streams. Okay, people like this song, but we didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how also on Mundane and Magic you work with Neil Siglin. How did she end up doing guest vocals on the last song on the album?
We knew that we wanted a female vocalist, and it was like I said before, I was a session musician for the band Tiamat, and I was touring with Tiamat, and her band Theatre of Tragedy was on that tour. So I got to know Nell from there, and I liked her voice. So when we needed a female vocalist, we just reached out to her, and it worked out great.
Yeah, I still love Terminus. It's a great song, and I love how you made like a Lego music video for that. How'd that come to be?
Yeah, but that's fan made. We were as surprised as everyone else. We just, holy shit, what is this?
Yeah.
So we all of a sudden was there. That was cool. It's a really funny, and it went kind of viral. It had a lot of views. There was some fans that there was I think it was two girls that used to come to shows in Norway. I think that taped their hands like with black, and so they were standing in the front line that had like Lego hands. Just kind of like an homage to that video.
Hell yeah. Like I said, still probably my favorite album. I put it up there with like the Gallery and like every other album that Dark Tranquillity has.
Thank you. I think it was important. It was an important one for me, at least.
Yeah. And then going into the next album, We Are the Void. I think this is a pretty good album. What was it like going from this to this?
I think we wanted to go different direction. I mean, explore new territories, and I think We Are the Void is a darker album. The theme in the lyrics is mostly about death, and not like death, like usually it's a buzzword in metal, but actually dying, like that we are, that our time is limited. And that's what the title is reflecting. Like it's like dark tranquility. It's we are the void. Like the void is dark tranquility, death. So there's this dark mood, and I think it's a moody album, like ominous.
Yeah.
And that's what we tried to capture. Again, it was two Madsen that mixed it, and yeah, coming because Haven was such a it was an appreciated album, and I think people maybe expected more of that. And I don't know if We Are the Void found that same home with the listeners as the other albums did, but I think it's a moody, dark album that I think we should play more stuff from it. I think it's
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I love like Iridium, Zero Distance, Shadow in Our Blood, and In My Absence. Like all pretty much great songs. I know there were like the video songs as well.
Yeah. Iridium was actually a song that Niklas showed to me before they recorded Projector. He wrote part of it before Projector, and he showed it to me. And when we started to make this moody album, I just remembered and said to Niklas, "Hey, didn't you show me something 10 years ago? What was that?" And we found it, and we finished writing it together. So that's a song that we actually started writing 10 years earlier. But
I had no idea that was around that long.
Anyway, but it was just around in our pockets. But we decided to, okay, maybe that's something we should because we never made something sensible out of it, and we thought, okay, now is the time to kind of make this song, and I think it turned out good.
Oh yeah. And then next up is a Construct. I think it's a pretty good album, and I'm always curious, what was like in your opinion, your like compositioning process for this album?
Yeah, with that album came quite a difference. Martin, who had been kind of the lead composer up until then, kind of ran dry. I mean, his creative machine was tapped out, and so he took a step back. And that album, like before, we wrote stuff by sending to each other and meeting in the rehearsal place. But that album was written in my studio, so we were just in my studio for the longest time. And it's different if you're sitting face to face and writing music, or if you're sitting side by side and can actually hear from a computer what you're writing. So it was a different writing process.
Yeah.
It turned out different. It discovers new territories again. Maybe something would be more like in the line of Projector or Haven. Something that more atmospheric, less metal. It was I guess it was time for us to experiment again. And sometimes what you write is just a reaction to what you have been out playing for a long time. So when you go back writing, it's like you don't want to do it. You don't want to do exactly the same thing, but you want to explore new territories, and that's what Construct became.
Yeah, and hard to believe that this year is the 10-year anniversary of this album. So how do you feel about this album now as opposed to when you first put it out?
I think it's good. I think maybe it hasn't aged as well. Some songs are still strong from it, I think. It was the first. We switched the mix person to Jens Bogren, who we still work with. I still think it's an important album. We did stuff on Construct. We learned stuff on Construct that we kind of put better into pieces with the next album, which I guess you have there somewhere.
Yeah, Atoma.
Yeah.
And I like this album, and this was actually I remember first seeing you all on this album cycle. So what was the thought process going into making Atoma?
At first it was chaotic because that's when Martin Henriksson left the band, and we weren't quite ready for that. Everyone was a bit in shock. Everyone in the band was in shock. But we needed to collect ourselves and kind of make an album. The process was pretty much the same as with Construct. We sat in the studio, we worked together, Niklas, me, and Anders mostly. I guess mostly me and Anders were in the studio, and Niklas was having a child, so he worked from home. We would just have this. We put our material down. We tried to make the best out of it, and I think it's not always a conscious decision on where you're taking when you write an album. Sometimes you're reacting to the material, and this is where we ended up. You try to do every song justice while writing it. It was a really hard mix because when we were done recording it, this is the first album that I produced. That I was like responsible for every department on how the album was going to sound. And when we got the first mix, I was so, because I knew that the songs are there somewhere, but I couldn't hear it in the mix. So I had to go to the studio, and I think we mixed it for 2 more weeks. Wow. Until we finally said, okay, now it sounds like it's supposed to. And then we were anxious to get it out. And we had been touring in America before. We had been doing headline tours before, but that was the first time I guess since Fiction that I realized when it was released that, okay, something happened with this album. This was that people were reacting to the album. And it was great a great feeling to see that we could do that again, because we had that feeling on Fiction as well. And like I said, We Are the Void and Construct, people were more kind of cautious towards them, but Atoma was received really well, I think.
Yeah, and it was also the first album with Anders Iwers. So what was that like working with him?
He's fantastic. He's just a great guy. I had worked with Anders before in Tiamat. That's when we knew him as friends as well. But playing Dark Tranquillity music with Anders was just great. He has this instincts as a bassist that I really like. And just, yeah, he was a good force in the band. It was great to tour with him. It was just like the perfect new bass player.
Yeah, and of course, like you mentioned, you produced this album. So what was the mind frame like producing this album versus like just working with a producer like you have with previous albums?
I think we never worked with a producer. I mean, there's been not since I joined the band. I think even though it's not credited as such, I think Martin Henriksson produced Haven up to We Are the Void, and I officially produced Atoma, but I think I had that role unofficially on Construct as well. So there was this time when Martin was the lead composer and lead, I guess, the producer, and then when he took a step back and he didn't want to do that anymore, that made room for me. So, but on Atoma was the first time that we wrote it out, because there was such a big part of, an idea is just an idea until it's polished. You can have a melody that is super good, but if you can't translate it to something that someone wants to listen to, it doesn't matter. So I feel it's a big responsibility, and I was nervous about not getting it right. So you stress every detail. You go into, yeah, and my method is so time consuming. So what I do is I spend so much time with the material until it's an album.
Yeah.
So it's always nervous, but once it's done, you can move on. It's kind of rewarding to have completed it.
Yeah, and I remember, like I said, the first time I saw you guys was on that album cycle. It was in 2017. I saw you with the tour you did with Warbringer at the Masquerade in Atlanta, Georgia, and that was great because I remember I had somebody that recognized me from my videos, and apparently his brother had like him and his brother had a VIP EP, but I think his brother couldn't make it, so he gave it to me. And I remember the first time meeting you and Mikkel and everybody. everybody, and that was like awesome. And I think you guys put on like a great show at that time. And I think it was also like the 10-year of Fiction at the time. And I know you played like pretty much most of the album there, but he also played like the Atoma songs.
Oh, we did. Okay, okay. I didn't really. Yeah, of course, it was 10 years. Yeah, I don't know if it was, but I mean, we do play a lot of songs from Fiction because it's just a great album to play songs from. So
Yeah,
I guess that happened anyway.
yeah,
But
and
I
then
remember that tour. Warbringer is we shared bus with them. They're great people.
oh yeah, yeah, and then of course the next tour I saw after that was 2018. You did like you guys, Amorphous, Moonspell, and Onion Gathering. I mean, I don't know if how we could see in the back. In the back, I have like the both posters of when I saw you
Oh,
guys. Guys, I pretty
yeah,
much
yeah. I
snatched it
see.
off the Masquerade wall. I
They're
literally
great.
have, yeah, I pretty much snatch like every every show that's happening at the Masquerade in Atlanta. I would just snatch it up and hang it up on the wall to the point where I'm pretty much out of wall space.
You need to use the roof.
Yeah, I consider that that I might have to do that. That yeah. Yeah, and those are like fun like tours, and I pretty much I think you guys are just like equally as great live as you are on the CD.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and touring is when you like when you make an album. There's so much guesswork, and you're kind of nervous about the results. You really want to do justice by the songs, and touring is like when you get to go out and meet people that felt the same things about the songs that you wrote. I mean, you start to write the songs with a feeling, and when that translates into other persons, it's just a great thing. So we enjoy touring a lot.
Yeah. And then of course you started touring for a bit for Atoma. But I know I think 2019 you took a break before a moment, but then of course, the certain virus that I refuse to name happened. Was that around the
Yeah,
time you started working for with stuff for Moment?
yeah. We were just in pre-production when we started to see the headlines that the world was changing, and the lyrical theme on Moment is like that something happens. I mean, there's a before and after. You have your certain circumstances, and then something monumental happens that makes it completely different. That's the lyrical theme of Moment, and it felt like we were experiencing that in real time because we read the news and it said like when the first thing you read is that something happens in China, and when there's just a few days, and you hear that there's like 15 cases in Italy, that is spread there so fast. That's the first time I get really scared that okay, this is gonna affect everyone. And so that was during pre-production, and the world went on lockdown, as you know. So did Sweden, and that's that's usually our situation anyway when we record an album, that we just lock ourselves in for a few months and we record an album. So at the first we didn't think about it, we were locked down anyway, but when we came out of the album writing process, the world was as well. And it's and I mean, of course, when you write an album you want to release it, you want to be out there and tour or yeah, to work on the album. And for us, it was never an option to sit on it and wait out. For first, we didn't know how long it was going to take, and I think people still need music even if the world is locked down. But it was weird to release an album into a global event if you don't want to use a name.
Yeah.
But it was super depressing, and I remember like because everyone's. I mean, you were locked down over there. Our colleagues are locked. Our crew is in Portugal. They locked down there. Friends are in Germany, locked down, and all of our lifestyle was kind of put on hold. So I remember just walking around in Gothenburg here and thinking like, will that time ever come back? You know that kind of pulse that you get when you go into a show, like when you're pushing through a crowd and you like feeling the anticipation of before a concert. Will we ever get there again? So I think it was kind of depressing
Yeah.
times. I think it was hard for everyone.
Yeah, I suppose it's still like a great album. Like I remember hearing like Phantom Days. I was like, wow, especially that Eyes of the World, the Dark Unbroken, Identical to None. Like I feel like every song definitely has like different like vibes, different emotions behind it. And I guess it captured, like, no pun intended, a moment, so to speak.
Yeah, it actually accidentally ended up doing that. But yeah. And I guess maybe that's we feel a certain way about that album because everyone was experiencing that album the first time in isolation, and that's a different mindset to have. I mean, the songs that you're mentioning, everyone had to listen to them by themselves. There was no, you're not going to be on a show. You're not going to like be on a metal bar and talk to your friends about it. Everyone was just listening to it on their own.
Yeah, it was also the first album with Chris Amott and the Jonas or yeah. What was that like working with them?
Yeah, but Johan was really involved in the songwriting, as he is on this new album that we're working on right now. And it was great to have this new creative force come into the band because even though, yeah, that's when Niklas Sundin also left the band. So that was another creative force that left. But then Johan kind of quickly found his own role in our creative environment. I still think we always need to have, even though we're new people, I think even though new people comes to Dark Tranquillity, I think it's important to kind of remember where we're coming from and what we try to examine with our music. And Johan really understood that early, and I mean, he's been listening to Dark Tranquillity. He's a great musician and a composer, so I think he fit really well into our writing process. But it was nice to experience the energy of a new musician that really made such an effort to add to our universe.
Yeah, and did they bring in something new to Dark Tranquillity that y'all didn't have previously?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Johan has he has a super open mind to music. There's nothing that could be too complicated for him. I mean, he's from the prog scene, but he has a great instincts. He's really technical. So that was new, and I think, like I said, when you're writing music, it's about reacting to the material, and it's also reacting to other person's instincts about the material. So you're kind of guiding your way together towards an end result, and it's great to do that with you. Chris was also, he wasn't involved in the writing process, but he was there recording, of course, and he made fantastic solos on the album. He's a fantastic guitar player. Yeah, one of the best.
Indeed, I agree with you. Yeah, and I loved how during the obviously during the lockdown you did like the special like live stream where you played this album in full. I think it's the only time you've ever played an album of yours in full. So what was that like? Because I know you done it in like a big like theater in Gothenburg.
Yeah, that was weird. And you're right. That's the only time we played an album in full, like from start to finish. But it was due to that isolation that we wanted to do something on the day of the release to play the album and kind of manifest, like to do it. We wanted to do it in an environment that should have people. So you kind of notice that there's empty seats that should be with persons sitting in them. So that's why we chose to do it in a theater, and it's a beautiful venue. But it's kind of weird to, perform a release show to a camera, but still knowing that people are gonna sit home and they're listening to it, but they have no reaction. But I think it was important to try to do something for ourselves and for people that which is about to discover the album, to not feel so much alone.
Yeah, and I'm glad to finally see some of these songs played live. Last year, you did that tour with Cataclysm and Nailed into Obscurity, and of course, I remember I've actually interviewed Mikkel before the show, so now I have you. So I have like a third of Dark Tranquillity, and I hope to get like everybody else on at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure you can get them here.
Hell yeah, yeah. And so then, of course, we're both Anders Ivers and Juvarplet, and then you got Christian Jensen and Joachim Nilsson. So how did Christian and Joachim end up joining the band?
Jocke has played with Johan before. They're from the same city. They are in the south of Sweden, in a town called Malmö. They're close to Denmark. So they had played together. They went to musical university together, and they played together for some shows in Johan's own band, Non-Exist. So he knew that Jocke was a great drummer. I mean, he's a bit younger than us. He's in his early 30s. So we were kind of hesitant on how would that work. But like, we're going to travel so much together. How is that going to work? But the first time we met him, he came super prepared. He knew everything. It's like we were going to rehearse for the festival summer, and I asked everyone, okay, do you need another run through of the songs? And he was, no, I'm good. And I know, oh yeah, you actually are. It was quite well done, man. He was just ready to go out of the block. So we were impressed by that, and he's a great guy. So it felt naturally we need to keep this guy.
Yeah.
And the Christian, you know that Michael has the side project called Grand Cadaver.
Yeah, I've heard, and it's fucking badass.
Yeah, it's old school. I mean, it's more punishing. It's like it's like we have both Christian, who's in the both band. It says like, we have the opposite process. I mean, in Tranquillity, we scrutinize everything for an album, and with Grand Cadaver, there's just like this raw energy that goes with the first instinct, and just push it as hard as possible. So it's like totally different worlds, man. And I think it's a super cool band. But Christian played in that band, and first he didn't know exactly if he. We just needed a bass player fast, and he was kind enough to do it. And then he just realized how much he enjoyed touring with us. Yeah, he ended up staying as well.
Yeah,
and he's a great guy. He fits really well into the chemistry. That Jocke does that too.
Yeah, and of course, I guessing they're going to be on the new album, obviously. So how's the status with the next Star Tranquillity album?
We're getting really close to recording it right now. Me and Johan has been writing most of the stuff. We started almost a year ago. So we've been, like I said, Johan lives in south of Sweden. I live in Gothenburg. So during this spring, we took turns. So like, I traveled down to Malmö. He comes up to Gothenburg, and we've been writing almost for a year. And now I think we're just like 3 weeks away from starting to record it. So right now we have the songs. We're just polishing. It's like, it's not like writing new songs at this point. It's more like, does this part of the song really do what it's supposed to? How can we make it fit better? So we're like in the final stage of molding. We always do a really extensive pre-production. So before we start recording, we have a blueprint on what's going to be recorded, and that's where we are now. The blueprint is kind of ready, and now we just need to really do it for real in the studio. So on the 15th of October, me and Jocke, we're going to travel up to another studio in Sweden with Jens Bogren, his studio, Fascination Street, and we're starting to record drums.
Yeah.
So it's coming up.
Yeah. Is there like a tentative release date for the new album? Like, I heard it'll be sometime next year.
Yeah, next year. Nowadays, before like, we've been around for such a long time, and the CDs was a big thing before, and what you did then was just like do one single, one video, and then try to get the album out as soon as possible. Nowadays, all the record labels wants to have. Everyone is adapting towards to get stream counts up.
Yeah.
So I guess what all bands do is that they kind of have a long lead time before they actually release the album. But it will be out next year.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say what our target date is, but it's going to be next year. But there's going to be some lead time with singles to kind of build the anticipation for the album.
I'm looking forward to that. And I'll buy everything, like CD, vinyl, cassette, all that because I collect like CD and vinyls. Like, you could see like a back, I have the vinyls, and I have like the CD, my big CD collection here.
Oh man. Oh,
I've been
great.
I've been collecting
Great.
since I was 13, so I have like over 29,000 CDs.
You need to get a house insurance.
Yeah, or something. Something, man, something. So so anyway, Martin, I just want to thank you for this conversation. It was great to be able to chat with you today. Is just anything else with that Dark Tranquillity you'd like to plug in terms of like tours and stuff? And I'm looking forward to seeing you at Prague Power next year. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, we're really looking forward to do Prog Power, and we're gonna make sure to we're gonna try to prolong that stay to start out with a new album early in America. So I can't wait to come back to America. It's always a great time. Uh, I'm looking forward. And hey, let's meet up next time in Masquerade.
Hell yeah, I'm be down, man. Dan, let's get like emails or numbers or something.
Yeah, let's do that.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Martin. Is just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
Just thanks for listening, and I see you out there. We're going to try to do our best with the new album, and I'm optimistic at this point, and we're just going to need to get it done, and then we're going to see you out there. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody, Martin Brandstrom from Dark Tranquillity. We'll see you next time.